What's up everybody, this is the 2007 Chevy Impala SS. Huge thanks to Harrison Auto Sales for providing me here with this really clean and really rare Impala SS to review for you guys today. So about the Impala SS, well, this was this hilarious offering from Chevy and General Motors in general that offered a front-wheel drive V8 powered sedan here. It was the first time the V8 had been in the Impala in the 21st century, not being seen since 1996. And so having it here, it debuted at the 2006 model year and then it continued on here through the 2009 model year. This is the 2007 we're looking at here, and they all basically look the same, and they're pretty much the same styling as a regular Impala. They did very little to differentiate it. You just basically have 18-inch wheels that are unique, you have a spoiler on the back, and you have badging, and that is basically it. Maybe the dual exhaust tips are unique. That's about it. It was very, ho-hum, even by 2007 standards, very plain Jane and boring. But the good news though is you have to remember that Pontiac was still around back in 2007, and they offered a very similar package with a Grand Prix GXP. And so that was, the more aggressive looking one of the two. And so I guess Chevy deferred to Pontiac if you wanted aggressive and exciting styling. This is also the same package as basically available also in the Monte Carlo SS. So another option for those who wanted something a little more visually exciting than the Impala. But I mean, I think, to give it some credit, it is a very sleeper looking vehicle. And if you strip the SS badges, it would look like a regular Impala. No one would know the difference until they heard that V8 engine. And so whenever you look at it with this sleeper context, it gives a little bit more of a cool appeal in my opinion, but it still is, pretty ho-hum, boring Impala styling from 2007. But you're not buying it for the Impala package necessarily. You're buying it because it's a V8 powered sedan. And just like the exterior, the interior is nothing exciting. It is mid-2000s GM, which is very underwhelming. Cheap materials everywhere. Now, admittedly, materials have gotten a lot better, in the past couple of decades here. So even though this was underwhelming even in 2007, it wasn't as wildly underwhelming as it is today. So I mean, it's just very hard, cheap plastic everywhere. Nothing feels very nice. Even the padded vinyl barely has any padding to it. And it's also funny too, this is a full-size vehicle. That's what it was classified as, but the usage of space is just terrible. I mean, I'm only 5'9", and like the back seat, I have like maybe an inch of legroom to spare back there. I mean, I have way more legroom in most compact sedans here in 2023. It's kind of hilarious just how that back seat is still so tight for a vehicle this large. The trunk space is huge though, so that's one upside here as far as practicality goes. And it's a comfortable back seat as well. But anyway, getting up to the front here once again. On the SS, you had nothing unique really aside from an SS badge on the steering wheel, which by the way doesn't telescope, it only tilts. So you don't have the best driving position. And these seats also have like almost no bolstering, and it's this smooth leather that means you don't get held into your seat very well at all. And so that'll be interesting whenever we're carving up a back road here in a few minutes. But yeah, so no unique seats. They didn't even bother to, embroider SS on the headrests or anything. Like, come on, like there is like nothing here. They did also, instead of having the wood grain, you have this plastic thing that's supposed to look like metal, but is a far cry from even looking like metal. Middle here is obviously very simple and basic. Thankfully, you have an auxiliary jack, so if you are watching this in 2023 and want some kind of, compatibility with an audio system, you at least have an auxiliary jack there to work with. It does also have satellite radio, which is nice, and this one has the optional heated seat and Bose stereo upgrade, which was one of a few little option packages you could get on these, but they were pretty much all the same as far as what you got on them. And I mean, again, you're buying this vehicle for the V8. Even back then you were buying it for the V8, but just to put it in perspective, this started at $27,000 back in 2007. You might think, wow, 27 grand, that's pretty cheap for a V8 powered car. Except when you adjust for inflation, this would be about $40,000 today, which just is another great illustration of just how much nicer vehicles we have here for the same or less money these days. And I mean, you can get a Charger V8, even one of the slowest V8 versions, with a way nicer interior, way more safety, way more technology, for basically the same price. So everyone thinking cars are too expensive these days, when you look at inflation, I mean, this is what you got for $40,000 back then. It's kind of mind-blowing. But anyway, let's start it up and go for a drive, because that's what this vehicle is about. Not the exterior, not the interior, but how it drives the V8, driving only the front wheels. But anyway, it's of course a traditional usual key here with a little keyless access thing they had back then. You slip into the slot, and and it starts right up. All right, so setting off here in the Impala SS. So lots to take in here immediately. So first thing you notice, I think first off, it's just the brake pedal travel is so long. I mean, this car has 82,000 miles on it, which is, you know, a little high, but for a 2007 is actually really low. So I'm not sure if age is at play here or not, but these brakes are pretty underwhelming. I mean, even by 2007 standards, it was only a 2-piston brake set up front there for a vehicle that weighs over 3,700 pounds and is powered by a V8. Seemed like it was probably a little under braked, and the first few brakes I've done already have given me a very clear indication that I need to give myself plenty of leeway with the braking here in the Impala SS. Other things to note about it, so you actually, I will say the steering is kind of nicely weighted. It's kind of numb, but by modern standards, where a lot of things are so numb with electric power steering these days, having hydraulic power steering means this actually does have decent feel, I would say, by modern standards. Now, back then everyone complained about how it was dead steering, because back then everyone was spoiled with tons of steering feel and everything. That's, you know, not quite the case these days. So I think I can live with that. Another thing is, you know, visibility is also really great. You have a pretty high seating position here. I mean, you don't have a ton of headroom, to be totally honest, but you know, you have a good view out, and very easy to drive in that regard. Also, though, the suspension is so soft that whenever you go to hit the brakes, I mean, there is a good amount of brake dive, and that was something, again, that they complained about back in 2007. So this isn't just me looking through the lens of, you know, modern chassis dynamics. It's even back then they were like, nope, this isn't good. And so you know, it's all, again, goes back to the bottom line is you're going to want this for the V8. Everything else takes a backseat. Everything else is a compromise, and so as long as you approach it with that mindset, I guess you won't be disappointed. But if you are someone who wants something that's a little tighter feeling, the Grand Prix GXP, they actually did do a little more suspension work too to make that a little bit sportier, and I'll get into more of the details of that here once we're actually turning onto a back road and seeing how it does. But just kind of casually accelerating here. Another thing that you'll notice is the fact that you have a 4-speed automatic transmission. Yes, even in the year 2007, GM was one of the few still running a 4-speed, them alongside Subaru and a few others. But, you know, in a vehicle like this, especially with the amount of, you know, torquey feeling you have from this V8, you know, it's actually not too bad so far. We will see whenever I push it beyond, you know, 2/10 what it's like. But, you know, first impression is that the 4-speed actually works fine. It's a very old school kind of feel, you know, with the torque converter doing a good bit of the work and all that. But I mean, it's really smooth, and, you know, getting into the smooth thing too, you know, that is one thing to give this vehicle credit for, is if you are someone who just wants V8 power and a smooth ride, this is great. You know, if you're not trying to have something with sporty handling, this is totally fine. You know, I mean, it's nothing, again, certainly nothing impressive, but, you know, if you're looking for a comfy cruiser with a V8, I think this fulfills that role very well, and I think that's honestly what Chevy was probably going for back then with tuning this. And again, they did go more aggressive with the Pontiac version, and I'm sure even the Monte Carlo probably feels a little bit sportier being a coupe. But, you know, honestly, like, road noise isn't bad. You know, it's pretty quiet in here. And so from a refinement standpoint, again, especially by 2007 standards, I think it was, you know, a pretty nice, comfy cruiser, and I have to give it credit for that. But let's turn down onto this back road and see how this V8 powered front wheel drive sedan does. And here we go. All right. It actually accelerates pretty good, and in a straight line at least, it puts the power down fairly well. We have 235 wide tires here, but it's really not bad. So we have a 5.3 liter naturally aspirated V8 engine right out of the Corvette of its time. It has 303 horsepower and 323 pound-feet of torque in this application. And 0 to 60 was actually an impressive 5.6 seconds, which back then was impressive. And I mean, even these days for a 300 horsepower car, you know, 5.6 seconds is, you know, not bad. And so, you know, on paper, that's where this thing looked the most impressive. Also, like, top speed, 154 miles per hour in this thing, which I think, especially with the suspension tuning, would be an act of bravery. But that's what they say. And actually, it's funny, the speedometer only goes up to 140. So this might be one of the very rare cars in history to ever under-promise its top speed with the speedometer. Because most other vehicles, you know, they have 200 mile per hour speedometers and they do 130 miles an hour. So this actually can go beyond its speedometer, which is kind of funny. I don't know why they didn't bump it up to 160 if it was actually rated to go 154 miles per hour. Anyway, though, you know, it's fine, again, with a 4-speed. I mean, obviously it's not going to throw you in the back of your seat with this, you know, very slushy automatic and all that. But again, it's actually not bad. And it's kind of funny because I read so many reviews about how torque steer was horrendous, and we will certainly play around with that a little bit more. But at least here in a straight line on a dry, warm day, I didn't feel any torque steer, which I'm really surprised about. All right, I'm gonna do another acceleration here. Let's try this again. All right, so yeah, you know, I have to say it doesn't torque steer nearly as bad as the reviews said. I mean, this might not be putting out as much power as it did when it was new. I don't know. It certainly doesn't feel like 300 horsepower. And like one modern vehicle with about the same horsepower and torque that I just reviewed a few weeks ago, honestly, was the Honda Civic Type R and the Acura Integra Type S. And those definitely feel a lot faster than this does. So, you know, again, on paper, this looks great, but especially when it's held back by a 4-speed automatic, it's not going to feel like 300 modern horsepower. But this time, I'm going to turn traction control off and see if we can get some torque steer. Here we go. Okay. Okay, so it said traction control was off, but it still kept biting back and limiting my power. So that's interesting. Traction control does not, first off, help torque steer, and certainly does not help with power delivery. That's bizarre. So anyway, this thing is funny. So I have been feeling, if you know, punch it when the wheel is turned, you can provoke a little bit of torque steer. I'll slow down here for this corner, and we'll punch it coming out. Okay, so you feel it a little bit. It's honestly, the thing that's more sketchy is the suspension, because it's just so wallowy. I'm just all over the place. It's hilarious. But GM actually, they tried to curb the torque steer, because what they did was they used the ABS system to independently brake the separate front wheels to try and limit it a little bit. Supposedly, it wasn't super effective from the reviews that I've seen. I don't know, when I'm in a straight line, it's not bad, and even whenever the wheels turn, it's not terrible, at least here, again, on a dry summer day. So, I don't know, I feel like maybe the reviews complaining about that were a little bit over-exaggerated with their complaints, but, you know, it drives, you know, totally fine here, and, you know, I think that, you know, again, the fact they tried to, you know, do the best of what they had to work with is commendable. I mean, you even had unequal length drive shafts because, again, first off, the engine's facing the wrong direction, and also the fact that, you know, it's not perfectly centered there means that you're going to have unequal length drive shafts, which is, you know, so I mean, they really, I'm honestly just impressed that they went for this, that they even tried, because, you know, they had the odds against them here with the platform they had to work with, and, you know, the things they had to work within. You know, I just think it's kind of impressive that it actually drives as well as it does, in my opinion. All right, now this time I'm going to be completely from a stop, and I'm going to stomp on it here with traction control on, see how it does. Here we go. All right, there we go. All right, so that definitely gives you some wheel spin there, and honestly though, even there, I didn't really feel much torque steer, just, you know, a bunch of wheel spin and that's it. So anyway, but any car that can do a good little burnout is a fine car in my mind. But let's test out the handling a little bit more here. We got a very tight hairpin turn here, and let's toss it in and see. Lots of understeer and a little bit of torque steer there. I mean, it's hilarious. I'm just trying to like brace myself because I'm just sliding around all over the place, and the handling is just hilarious. Now, they did try to improve handling a little bit, by the way. They have special anti-roll bars and spring rates and bushings, so, you know, a few little suspension tweaks there just to improve it a little bit. But if you did want to have a more impressive suspension setup, the Grand Prix GXP was the way to go for that. That definitely went a little bit further. You had Bilstein struts in that one. It also had wider wheels and tires. You also had about 132 pounds less weight there in the Grand Prix GXP, and just a little bit of a more dynamic setup, at least the way they, you know, tried to set it up. So, you know, again, if you want this package, but then you also want a little bit better handling, the Grand Prix GXP is going to be the way to go. And, you know, but even still with that, you know, all these vehicles are still on this W-body platform, which was 18 years old even back in 2007. So, I mean, there's only so much they could work with. I mean, they enhanced it There's a little bit more wheel spin. You know, they tried to enhance it and they tried to, again, maximize what they had to work with, but it was just old bones, you know, the wrong kind of a setup, and just, you know, made it very difficult to do anything super impressive with it. And so that was really the biggest problem, is just that, you know, again, they just did not have much to work with here. And for anyone that's curious, these weigh 3,711 pounds, which by modern standards, 3,700 pounds doesn't sound so bad for a V8 powered large sedan. But back then, you know, that was still on the heavy side as well. And even these days, you know, for having no safety equipment as far as all the fancy sensors we have in modern cars, and having, you know, no infotainment, and just being a very simple interior, I'm kind of surprised that all of this added up to 3,700 pounds, to be totally honest. But that's what these things weigh. So, and you feel that weight in corners. It certainly feels heavy, even though there's so many modern cars that are heavier that feel lighter than this, just again because of this soft suspension setup, which again is great for comfort. And, you know, if that was the priority, which I think it was, then, you know, mission accomplished there for Chevy. But it just means that, you know, it certainly does feel heavier and just looser and sloppier as a result. And of course, eventually Chevy did finally deliver an awesome rear-wheel drive V8 powered sedan they've always wanted, thanks to the help of Holden, who built it for them with the SS sedan, which came there, you know, around 2013, 2014, 2015. You know, that's when the proper, amazing to drive Chevy SS sedan came onto the scene, as well as its fantastic G8 brethren that came before it. You know, but all those vehicles were truly the better driving ones. I haven't driven the G8, but I drove the Chevy SS sedan. It was fantastic. They offered it with a manual. It was rear-wheel drive, V8 the right direction, amazing handling, and also still had sleeper look. So if you want a sleeper looking Chevy SS sedan, definitely, if you have the money to spend, go get one of those SS's. I think those are really going to be future classics in a lot of ways, because those were fantastic, so much fun to drive, and just phenomenal vehicles, and also really rare. But anyway, you know, also when you look at the context of 2007, this also was kind of a tough sell, not only for the fact that it, again, cost the equivalent of $40,000 today to start, but also the fact that the Dodge Charger had just come onto the scene there recently, I think around 2006 model year there. So you had a proper rear-wheel drive 5-speed automatic, a little bit more advanced there, with, you know, a touchscreen and all that in those Chargers, and it had the Hemi V8, which had made a triumphant return in the cars there with the Charger and the Challenger, you know, a couple years later. But I mean, you know, that was the hot car, and so I guess this was Chevy's attempt at trying to compete. When you're talking about front-wheel drive versus rear-wheel drive, you know, anybody that, you know, wants a V8 and is excited about a V8 is going to go for the rear-wheel drive V8, not the front-wheel drive one. So, you know, I just feel bad. This car kind of had an uphill battle from the start. It had an uphill battle in marketing. The engineers had an uphill battle. It was all just tough, but they did it anyway. And I have to commend them for it, because a lot of times these days, you know, car companies won't take risks like this. And at the end of the day, if nothing else, this is an awesome sounding, great cruiser. And just having, you know, a V8 powered cruiser, having that nice exhaust note while you cruise around is just something that's really awesome and really rare even back then, and continues to be, you know, really rare, especially these days. But anyway, that's all of my thoughts here on the Impala SS. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Harrison Auto Sales once again for providing me here with this very clean Impala SS review for you guys today. But anyway, thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.